Another thing, you know, that's I really wanted to say, today is that I was looking at a paper that was coming out, like a newspaper, where they were talking to us Democrats. They were saying that we were puzzled, about why so many working class white people voted for the Republican Party, considering that it doesn't really represent their economic interest. That it is really just the party of the rich, and you have all these poor white people that are voting Republican. And what they said in response was just like they literally did it. They were going in and saying, sometimes it's not that these people are stupid or uneducated. It's about conviction that they have. You know, they believe that abortion is evil or something, and that's why they vote the way they do. So, in light of that, I wanted to just say my own feelings about abortion, and then say it to myself that I think that America's moral compass is the cancer that is rotting America. Just so you know. It's these moral fucking issues that are screwing our country up and are why we can't have nice things. You know? It's because you care so goddamn much about abortion and guns that we can't have nice things. You know? So I wanted to say what I really think and feel. You know? I only hold these fucking people in contempt and their convictions too. Fuck them and their moral compass. But yeah, on the abortion issue, I am, how do I put this? I last year I bought access. I literally paid for and bought access to a video that was put forward by Rebecca Gompertz. Do you know who Rebecca Gompertz is? She's the founder of Women on Waves. Who were they? As an organization. Have you ever heard of an organization called She Shepherd? She Shepherd were a bunch of people that went, in and tried to directly intervene and engage in direct action to prevent seal clubbing. You know, they literally they got into wars with those fucking people. They would ram their ships and stuff. They were a real group of like heroes and heroic for what they were doing. They were directly intervening to like stop people from killing them. I mean, it was really kind of cool. We admired these guys because they did what it took to get the job done. you know. Well, Rebecca Gompertz kind of had allies in Greenpeace and such, and she went out there and she literally, she was talking to somebody from that particular organization, and they, they suggested that she could, take these women out into international waters if they had a ship, you know, and perform the abortions at high sea, if they could get a chartered ship, basically, and they got a ship from one of the governments up there in Europe, and they literally were blocked from entering the port in Portugal, and it caused such a huge firestorm of diplomatic politics and clusterfuck that within 2 years, ultimately Portugal legalized abortion. Like Rebecca Gompertz was like a real like she was a firecracker and like heroic queen, hellraiser, for feminism. I mean, she raised absolute hell for women's rights, and that, like, yes, queen, you know, like I admire this woman. I'm just like, yes, queen. When I see her on Democracy Now, like that's all that was my reaction to it. It was just like, yes, queen, goddess, yes, you know, get it done. So you know where my heart is on this stuff. Like I feel that the people that have been behind the pro-choice movement have, like, okay, like I bought Helena Silverstein's book Girls on the Stand, and it's evident that when parental notification laws came down, there were pro-choice activists that were fighting the cause back then. you know there were people out there back then fighting for the pro-choice movement, and what did they ended up compromising when the Republicans were breathing down their necks with threats and such, and they backed down, like they were fighting a defensive battle, and against this stuff, and they folded, and they said they compromised with the Republicans, where they were like, well, we want to bake into it, a judicial bypass project process because some people's parents are abusive, so they might need a way around this particular piece of legislation. I don't care, you know. As far as I'm concerned, like I am steadfastly against the whole fucking thing and for a full repeal, of parental notification laws for minors seeking an abortion. I don't think that we should force them to notify their parents, and I think that our piece of legislation on this particular issue is a fucking crap, you know? My instincts on this are I don't know what 16-year-old, 15-year-old, young teenage girl that is under the legal limit, she's not an adult really. I don't know anybody that I could possibly imagine that is that young. It's not that I know anybody like that these days. I don't like hang out with teenage girls that are not, grown adults. That's not how I spend my time, but I do know that they still exist, and I can't imagine somebody at that age, not able, really able to really effectively navigate the court systems. And, like I'm concerned from that capacity. Like I've been concerned for a long time about this particular issue. I mean, like, I got upset because I didn't want people to think that, there was like this secret vagina, you know, conspiracy behind the scenes that you weren't seeing, where I was taking my marching orders from like some secret, you know, stealth, feminist allies that were basically giving course and direction for where my own activism was going. I was like really deeply pleading for some autonomy and how I fought for their own liberation, and to be an individual activist that was like fighting for women's liberation and such. So I took this particular mantle up as like my pet cause. I was giving money to Jane's Due Process, which is an organization in Texas that literally provides, you know, um, it provides legal representation pro bono for a lot of these teenagers that are seeking, a judicial bypass. Like literally, like they're addressing the issue directly as an organization. They're literally on the front lines of the abortion battle down there in Texas. And over in Illinois, Human Rights Watch is pushing for a repeal of parental notification laws. And as a person who read Helena Silverstein's book, it was a real source of like huge outrage for me because you had these judges asking like wildly inappropriate questions of these girls that were actually on the stand. It was a documentation process, and what were these judges asking them but questions like, don't you know that God wants you to keep your baby? And I'm enraged because I'm thinking, I don't think that this court has established that God exists, so objection, facts, not in evidence. Like that's going through my head, and then it's like, I don't know if he hasn't established it in court, what business does he have asking the teenagers of it? And I think that if that isn't judicial misconduct, maybe our laws surrounding judicial misconduct should be rewritten so that that actually qualifies. Because that's abuse coming from the direction of a judge who is just pushing his Christianity onto this poor teenage girl that doesn't even know. She doesn't she shouldn't be certain. She should have questions about whether God exists or not. She should wonder. And she should not have her mind made up on that issue already. She should be in a period of exploring and figuring out for herself what she believes as far as that's concerned. And you know God, we don't know that he actually exists. You don't know. Like, you claim to be certain, you can claim to be certain, but you really can't. You know, there's no rational basis, for a lot of these beliefs. They're taken on faith, and that never was satisfying for me, you know. I just wasn't, a person of faith. It wasn't something that I had a strong ability in myself. And I read Helena Silverstein's book, or at least part of it, and I got to that point, and it just got too upsetting. I was just it got to the point where it was difficult to keep reading the book. It was pissing me off that badly. I wanted to like throw the thing across the room in blood curdling rage. I mean, that was the experience of reading it. If you want to know where my heart is truly and what my true position is on the abortion issue, I'm speaking to you as my most vulnerable self and just telling you the truth. I am pro choice, and I consider my position to be a fairly radical position. I think that we should just trust that a teenage girl who has gotten pregnant can talk to her parent if she wants an abortion, and it's safe to talk to her parent about that issue. For the vast majority of teenage girls, it's true. They can just notify their parent. But there's that narrow subset that are at risk of being kicked out of their house from ultra strict and ultra conservative parents that I worry about. The ones that are at risk of being thrown on the streets, getting the shit kicked out of them, who have parents that, really aren't, what parents ought to be, And don't tell me there aren't bad parents in America. There always have been. My mom was a victim of one of them. I'd like to really believe that every parent in this country would support their teenage daughter in that situation. But unfortunately, I live in the real world, you know, and there are terrible things, things that, you wouldn't want to talk about, but they happen. They're horrors, and what frustrates me, is that the state is basically treating this as like one size fits all, and like a one size fits all approach makes sense. And the moment that you're going there with that, with law and the laws that you're crafting on the books, we're already in trouble. The bill should just be repealed. These laws never should have been written in the first place, and it's fucked up that they were, and it's fucked up that pro-choicers were willing to compromise at all. you know i am I am firmly in support of abortion, and if Roe versus Wade was overturned and it was turned into a crime to give money to the abortion funds, I would still keep giving money. I'm willing to become a criminal for what I believe, just so you know. I am a radical on this issue, and it infuriates me. And I look at the way that some people have such strong conviction in the other direction, and I roll my eyes. I can't help but hold like those people in contempt for their convictions. That's what I really believe. How dare you try to insert yourself in between her and her abortion? You had no right, and it's fucked up that in our country, the voters of our country are able to vote on this shit in the first place. Women's rights should be baked into the Constitution in a way in which they're no longer subject to the whims of the American public. That's how I feel.